everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Transform Inventory Management and Thrive in a Changed Marketplace. Our goal today is to provide you with beneficial insights that will help you get the most out of your enterprise technology investments. Before we get started, let me review a few of our guidelines for the session. Attendee phones will be muted for the duration of the presentation. Please feel free to send me a chat if you run into any technical difficulties during the event. We encourage everyone to submit questions at any time using the Q&A feature. We will address your questions during the Q&A segment at the conclusion of the discussion. You can access both the chat and Q&A features of Zoom by hovering your cursor over the bottom center of your webinar screen and clicking on the icon. Today's session will run for 30 minutes and conclude at 1:30 p.m. Central Time. Our agenda includes a brief introduction to Ultra Consultants and our presenters for today's session. We'll quickly move on to the main event, a thoughtful discussion on transforming inventory management in a changed marketplace with industry experts from Ultra Consultants and Vision 33. Then we'll share some additional resources that are available to you before moving on to Q&A during the remaining time. I'd like to take a brief moment to let you know that Ultra Consultants is serving as your host today and tell you a little bit about who we are. Since 1994, manufacturers and distributors throughout North America, as well as companies with global operations, have teamed with Ultra as trusted advisors and industry best practice experts to guide them through their business process improvement and enterprise technology transformation journeys. As independent ERP consultants, our team is part of our clients' organization, working shoulder to shoulder with ERP project teams throughout the country. Being a vendor-independent consulting firm means two main things. First, we are your partner for guiding you in your vendor education and selection, and that's where we help you get to know in depth the enterprise software vendors and implementation practices that are best for your company and your unique project needs. Second, we are also your partner for helping you discover how to make improvements throughout your organization using your chosen technologies. Please feel free to reach out to me if you would like to learn more about Ultra or visit us at ultraconsultants.com. We have a special guest joining us today from Vision 33. Vision 33 is a leading global ERP solutions provider focused on providing SAP Business One and more. They were founded with a clear vision of how technology solutions and professional services can transform growing organizations. The company's growth and success owe to a successful SAP solutions, e-government practice, and IT professional services in the private and public sector. Vision 33 offers an end-to-end partnership that provides access to world-class resources at a local level throughout North America and Europe. Vision 33 is consistently recognized by the industry for its notable growth and dedication to helping customers achieve success. This is Kristen Renda, Marketing Program Manager at Ultra, and your moderator for today's webinar. I'd like to now introduce today's experts. From Ultra, we have Senior Consultant Dave Saunders. Dave has more than 25 years of experience helping mid-size and large manufacturing organizations and wholesale distribution companies leverage modern ERP technologies, optimize their operations, and accelerate their business processes. From the Vision 33 team, I'd like to welcome Carl Lewis, Chief SAP Business One Ambassador. Carl is a renowned expert on SAP Business One, a leader with the America's SAP User Group, an author, speaker, blogger, and podcaster. At Vision 33, he develops, manages, and enhances relationships with customers, software solution providers, and SAP. Dave and Carl, thank you both for joining us today. And now I'd like to move on to the main event, Transform Inventory Management and Thrive in a Changed Marketplace. Dave, over to you.
Thanks for the introductions, Kristen, and good afternoon, everyone. And if you're on the West Coast, I guess still good morning. Over the past 18 months, we've all been dealing with and witnessing impacts of the pandemic on our businesses. Some businesses pivoted quickly, finding ways to adjust to new ways of selling. For many, e-commerce became that new go-to-market strategy. Carl, do you have any tips for businesses who are looking at e-commerce for their business? And what are some of the key things they should be considering?
Well, thank you for having me here today, David. Appreciate it greatly. E-commerce topic. Of all the topics during the pandemic, this one's at the top of the list. You know, about a year before the pandemic occurred, I was doing some research, and I discovered that about 25% of small businesses still didn't even have a website. Boy, has that changed rapidly in the last year. So you've seen all kinds of businesses put up e-commerce sites very, very quickly. And thankfully, it can be done quickly. And because of that speed, it saved a lot of businesses for sure. I think it's unknown how many businesses were saved because they put up some sort of e-commerce channel. You think about all the little restaurants and places that, you know, put some kind of online ordering system and delivery system in place. It was pretty dramatic, and the changes that they had to go through. They're all fortunate that e-commerce can kind of stand on its own, right? It can be a system on the side, which for the vast majority of those businesses, that's what it is right now, because they didn't put in an integrated system, integrated to their ERP or anything else. They just sort of, for lack of a better expression, slapped the solution in place to survive, right? And so hundreds of thousands of businesses did exactly that. It's just amazing to me that, you know, so many were unprepared completely for what we went through, and being able to stay in touch with their customers in this fashion really became about survival. Brick and mortar versus online, in terms of the percentages, has kind of flipped over this past year. And so a lot of people are reevaluating what's our business going to look like in the future. And many believe that e-commerce will kind of take on the leading edge of business going forward and never really go back to exactly where we were before. The great thing is there's not just one e-commerce solution. There are hundreds, right? With our customer base, we saw people choosing solutions in the marketplace sort of depending on their size and their complexity. They might choose something like WooCommerce, Shopify, Magento, BigCommerce, and different channels, even like an Amazon marketplace, right? They might do that. One customer I talked to had actually put up 7 different sites for their order taking process. And all of those sites create quotations, and they did integrate it into their ERP system, and it helped their business dramatically. I think it's the big dynamic is that many businesses actually grew because of e-commerce during this past 13 months of the pandemic, and are still sort of experiencing that. It's changing the landscape and the way that we work with our customers, you know, across. Many of those businesses also are now global for the first time ever, right? So I think the biggest piece of advice is you might need to reevaluate what you did initially and do something a little different going forward. Because there's a really good chance that these businesses that sort of slap these fast solutions in place have learned something about themselves and about the marketplace that if they had it to do over again, they would do it a little differently. And thankfully, these fast solutions aren't that expensive. So that's not bad money spent. That's good education, right, in the process. So I would say, you know, many of them, as things continue to sort of settle down and move to whatever, you know, part of normal we can assume will be there again someday, it's a good time to be thinking about what do I really think the future is going to be? Because that's a bit of an unknown right now. And the decisions I make will be much more strategic than the tactical ones we made early on in the whole process. I think one of the biggest challenges I heard about was basically businesses that were B2B, right? They were selling, you know, pallets full of stuff to another distributor, another place of business that's going to distribute them to their channels and all of those things. All of a sudden, they decide to do business with customers, right? Just regular old you and me's out there. And they go from handling about 5 shipments an hour to handling 20 shipments an hour, because all of a sudden they have all these e-commerce orders coming in from, you know, consumers, and their systems weren't built for that by any means. So e-commerce delivered a lot of problems, right, to the marketplace also, as well as being a great solution. It was a great problem generator for people who had not done this kind of business before. So I think my biggest piece of advice, since you asked for it, is take a careful look at how e-commerce is really going to impact your business in light of what it has done over the last 13 months. And maybe what you want to do going forward is a little bit different than what you're doing today.
Yeah, and those are really great points. And you know, some of the stuff that we've seen as well is, you know, the e-commerce, the blending of merging, if you will, of blurring, maybe a better way to phrase it, the B2B to B2C marketplace. You know, just the fact that even as a B2B buyer, I've grown accustomed to that Amazon experience, as I refer to it as, is, you know, being able to go online, find the product, find description, find videos, find pricing, you know, is it on stock? When's it going to show up? I'm expecting that. And when you look at the demographics of, you know, the next wave, if you will, of employment, you know, there are studies that show a very large number of those people. Really, that's what their expectation is. They're totally okay with going online and placing their orders and checking the status and paying it, and frankly, maybe never even interacting with a person. So it's thinking about that. It's, you know, you mentioned marketplaces early on in your discussion, and that's another one where, how do you interact with them? Are you providing replenishment to the Amazon warehouse, if you will? Or are you getting the orders from Amazon or the other marketplaces and you're fulfilling them out of your facility? So, you know, do you have the right data to provide to them? And then are you getting the right information? So it's systems, but it's also process oriented. So it's there's a lot to think and consider. I thought your comment about, you know, the last 13 months, 14 months, if you put up a website, it was pretty inexpensive, frankly, education for you, opportunity to learn a lot. So for those who haven't gone down that path, I think the recommendation is you should really be thinking about that, where that fits into your future.
Yeah, you know, the Amazon effect has created a very sophisticated customer when it comes to the online experience, and you need to be able to raise the bar to compete and not just take an order and deliver it. Right, there's more involved in that, as you alluded to.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. I've heard the term enriched product data. So it's, you know, your basic product data that you get out of the ERP system, but it's then, you know, the PDFs, the frequently asked questions, it's the videos, it's all the stuff that goes around it. That's what people are expecting to find. So how do you provide that? Okay, so a lot of our clients, you know, the other aspect of the pandemic has been, you know, even before the pandemic, a lot of our clients had issues with inventory management. And I would say the pandemic probably exacerbated in many instances. You know, we had supply shortages. You know, we had a boat go aground in the Suez Canal and blocked up traffic for a long time. But, you know, managing that inventory is a struggle. And for distributors, you know, they operate on such tight margins, that inventory can make or break their business. And it's important that they have the right inventory, but not too much of it. So often, you know, today they're struggling with, do they have an accurate inventory? Do they know what's in stock? They're having a lot of fulfillment errors, things getting misshipped. You know, they commit to a delivery date and then end up being late for a variety of reasons. So what are some of the process solutions they can incorporate to help improve how they're running their warehouses?
Well, you know, you're absolutely right, Dave. A lot of the challenge I alluded to earlier is, you know, a lot of the transitions were from B2B to also now doing B2C. And it's a different game, and it brings a lot of challenges, and it starts sort of messing with my usually somewhat reliable inventory management methodologies, right? Because I'm dealing with ones and twos instead of, you know, hundreds all the time, and those ones and twos start impacting how many of the hundreds I have. So it's really confusing for folks. The supply chain, you know, has just gone through hell, right? In a lot of ways. And many folks have been challenged to have inventory. My wife works from home too, and she's in the packaging industry. And a lot of their stuff comes from China. And I listen to her. She works literally every hour of every day, just battling it out, right, with suppliers and containers. Container costs have gone up like 30–40% over the last year for some industries, and you can hardly get one out of China, right? So it's a real challenge for folks. And then they're looking for alternate suppliers, and they're trying to manage new relationships, right? Which is always a challenge to deal with another vendor, right? Who's going to supply to you and all the specific rules they have. And simultaneously, customer expectations have gone way up. You can have a customer that, gave you a forecast and they exceeded it, right? And you actually brought in more than they asked you to, and you fulfilled everything up to this date, but they still have demands. And now they're angry with you because you can't get more stuff faster than they anticipated. So their days are just filled with lots of conversations and, and many not so pleasant conversations because of that. We just had all kinds of, as we said, more orders brings more mistakes because the old system just can't handle the volume of orders, right, without making mistakes. The way you do everything, when you have 5 orders a day, 5 orders an hour, that's one thing. So your system can work well. But if it moves to 20 and the system isn't set up right, you're putting the wrong stuff in the wrong box and out it goes, and then it comes back and then you're packing it again. So the work just kind of, gets exponentially harder and more difficult and more costly. So a lot of those things make a big difference. And all of that screams for better warehouse management systems, right? So when I tell people, what do I need to look for in an ERP? I get that question. I always tell them, you absolutely must make sure that the warehouse management capabilities of the ERP system is adequate for your business and what your requirements are. And this season may develop a need for a lot of people to go back and reevaluate that. And they may need new ERP system, right, in order to fulfill that. They might need a new module, right, in their ERP system to fulfill that. They might need to go out and choose a best of breed application for warehouse management that they integrate to their ERP system. But you really have to get one, right? I mean, there's just no other way to do this adequately. And you've got to take out all of the errors and make things faster, which is what these WMS systems are all about, with handheld, readers and all of these things and the quality controls that they put into place. Without them, you will struggle every day to meet the high standards of the marketplace we live in today and to meet the expectations of our customers, right? It's kind of like there's almost a phrase they all say to themselves in their heads. If Amazon can do it, right, you can do it, right? They may not say that, but that's what they expect. And because they've been kind of spoiled by that experience. And as I said before, businesses haven't had the luxury of looking at strategic decisions for the most part, right? We know that because, organizations like ours aren't selling as many new systems as we were before the pandemic, right? So many businesses are kind of delaying some of these larger decisions until we get through this. But then there's going to be a lot of them that strategically are looking at what their demands are now and what the world they're trying to do business in the future. And they're going to be shopping, and WMS is going to be at the top of the list because this is where their pain has been, whether it's been vendor management or customer expectations, inventory control, adequate capabilities to predict what's going to happen and to really understand the supply chain and the time it takes to get the order and get the product and get it in the door and out the door one more time, right, to fulfill their customers' requirements. It's still a bit of the challenge of the unknown future, but no matter what, meeting your customers' demands, right, being able to manage your inventory properly is always going to be at the top of the list. And a really good warehouse management system is going to be a #1 requirement.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And interesting, some of the things that we've been talking with our clients is about thinking strategically. So yeah, the future is a little bit unknown, but it's going to be different than it was before. And now we're encountering labor shortages, the continued demand on the facilities to fulfill orders, more orders, smaller orders, faster. So we've seen some companies be very, I don't want to say aggressive, but maybe progressive in looking down the road and understanding that what they have today isn't going to get them to tomorrow, and they're determining when is the right time to make that investment. So there's an awareness that their current environment, current processes are not going to get them to be successful in a new distribution world, if you will. And so is it, more robotics to help offset and conveyors to help offset some of the labor shortage? Well, that's not an easy investment, but you need to make sure that you've got the right integration points with the right ERP system, right WMS. So it's can be a very complex discussion, but one that for the companies that are really, thinking ahead. And kind of goes back to those companies that were already going into e-commerce before the pandemic hit, and just they're already kind of set on that path. The importance of thinking ahead and try to figure out what is my business going to look like in 3 to 5 years. Do I have the right people? Do I have the right processes? Do I have the right systems in place to get me to where I want to be? And start to do research and talk to companies and find out, what is it going to cost? How am I going to get there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Reminds me of when I moved into my house, which I needed to renovate a big part of it. And all I had was a 2-seater sports car. I soon discovered that I needed a truck.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that in the world of inventory, right?
Yep, that's a great analogy. Great analogy.
Yeah.
So talking about demand and changes to what's being asked of us, asked of the distributors, the importance of keeping product in stock. How do distribution businesses keep up? How do you know when it's time to make changes? That kind of, we've talked about this new system. How do if I'm an owner of a distribution business, or I'm in charge of the warehousing operations, distribution operations for the business, CFO, how do I know? What are the things I should be looking for that says this is an indicator that we need to do something different?
Well, I try to keep this really simple, and so I'm going to make this sound a little bit like Jeff Foxworthy, right? He would tell you a little story, and then he would say, "You might be a redneck," right? Well, let me put it sort of in his language, right? If you don't have a fully integrated system, it might be time for a change. If you're not taking advantage of cloud technologies, it might be time for a change. If you're not on a digital transformation journey, right, a process, it might be time for a change. If the cost of doing nothing is greater than the cost that you'll need to invest, it might be time for a change. If your rate of returns is unacceptable, it might be time for a change. If you're running your business on separate and disconnected applications, it might be time for a change. If your workforce can't keep up with the demand, it might be time for a change. If you rely on spreadsheets, right, to run critical pieces of your business, it might be time for a change. If you can't compete, it might be time for a change. If you're losing business, wasting opportunity, it might be time for a change. And if more than 3 of those are true, it is time for a change, right? I don't think this part of the CEO, the CFO's decision-making is hard, right? This is pretty easy, determining if we need to make a change. The hard part is what change, what systems, where do we go beyond what we have? And, companies like yours are really helpful in that regard. So, especially if they have any mystification about that whatsoever. So that's my Jeff Foxworthy approach to how do you know if you need to make a change?
And I might add, that was an excellent impersonation of Jeff Foxworthy. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And you made the comment about, this is what Ultra does. And it is, I'll take this opportunity to kind of highlight, this is really in our wheelhouse. I mean, we come in, assess current state, looking at systems, looking at processes, often looking at people. And then we collaborate with you on, what does that future state look like? What's really key to it? And then we start to look at what are the systems that we need to have in place, to your point, that are fully integrated, hopefully under one umbrella, but maybe it's best of breed because it's different unique requirements. But we go through that full process and then help you make that selection, and then we can help do the implementation as well. But that certainly is really an important step in that process improvement we're looking for in current state and even in the future state doesn't always mean I need to have a new system. Some of it could be, hey, there is a different way to lay out your facility. There are different processes we could implement, and it has no requirement for new systems. So we're looking for those as well. But thanks for opening that door for me.
No, that's fine. I agree with you, because I've seen companies that all they needed to do was put in a rack system, right? And it made a huge difference, right? To their business, just in terms of their ability to be organized. Yep. So it's not always a brand new system. Sometimes it is just a simple process change or two. Still require an investment, but not as painful as putting in a whole new system, for sure.
Exactly. So we talked about integration. That was a key point. So, and I referenced robotics and conveyors and automation. By automating more, you can become definitely more efficient. How can distribution businesses apply this to their operations? What are some of the things that they can do to help automate their warehouse and better track inventory?
I think this is an exciting one for me, because it's I believe that the days of sort of the one big gigantic ERP system that did everything for you is fading very, very fast. And we're sort of going back in time from a technology perspective, where businesses are once again starting to, as you mentioned just a minute ago, look at the possibilities of what if we start choosing the best of breed for our business and put it all together, right? Uniquely for our requirements. And because today's technology is allowing us to do that in ways that we couldn't 10 years ago. So there's a lot of possibilities. I think, businesses start choosing the best suite of applications for themselves, rather than expecting their ERP provider to sort of do everything for them. And a lot of businesses are doing that. They're just not telling everybody about it. But their challenge is they're creating islands of information, right? They're going back to creating silos rather than integrating it all. So I think there's an educational sort of process going on right now about how you integrate these things. I give, for instance, I know a customer that's got, for instance, a SAP Business One for an ERP, a HubSpot for CRM and marketing, Shopify for e-commerce, they put in this last year, ShipStation for shipping. They use a Century Business Solutions, eBiz for credit card authorizations. They have iDocuments for AP automation. They have a homegrown quote configurator for their business that's kind of like a portal, right? And they have a customer portal, they've got an employee portal, and they've got an HR system. And they're integrating all of that together, right? And using their ERP as their primary sort of centralized data capture place, right? Putting there what they really need there for reporting purposes. But they've got 10, basically what they consider best of breed applications that they're making their own complete system out of. How are they doing that? Well, the new technology that's really allowing them to make this happen is iPaaS, right? Integration Platform as a Service. And Vision 33, got into this in the last couple of years and created a product called Saltbox. And in a year and a half, we've already done 97 projects, because it's so powerful to be able to put these systems together in a unified way. And it's just delivering tremendous value to people, because it makes integration projects that you so want to do much easier and much faster, and with far less of an investment. It's not all code, right? It's not all custom. The upgrades, all of those things still become fairly easy in the process with this sort of an approach. And it takes advantage of cloud technology, which is far easier to integrate in than our old standalone on-premises systems. So this concept, I think of it as the glue, or as a friend of mine says, I actually told him it was the rubber cement that sort of holds organizations together, because it has enough elasticity to allow them to be, kind of agile, do things quickly, to change if they need to change. What if one of those best of breed applications isn't fitting their needs any longer and they'd rather use, instead of HubSpot, they want to move to Salesforce? Well, okay, fine, do that. It's just a new connector. It's not redesigning the entire business, right, to take advantage of that. So it just allows people, no matter where the data comes in from, it all ends up in one repository, and it allows them to manage their logistics so much more efficiently and effectively because they have an integrated system. And I think that's the key. The automations happen as these systems, communicate one with another, and they set the stage to make them more efficient in a lot of ways. And so I think they're better able to take advantage of all the functionality of their software. And so these types of integration projects and automation projects are really, they're the future. And as I say, I think the Big Bang ERP, it's not gone, but there's parts of it that are fading. And I think it's fading faster. If I'm a predictor at all, it's fading faster for sort of the small and medium businesses. But the big institutional, conglomerates that we have are going to stick with those big ERPs because they are going to be much harder to change. They're still using these other little pieces, but they're not necessarily going to leave that big ERP behind. They'll still need it, from that perspective. So that's my take on the future of automation and integration.
Yeah, and those are really great points. And I know we're at the hour, but half hour as the case may be. But I want to just emphasize the importance of Saltbox as an integration tool. You highlighted the fact of the companies out there that have kind of that cornucopia. I've heard somebody refer to it as of solutions, right? Those point solutions, and it's I'm continually rekeying things from one system into another. I don't know where the single source of the truth is, but if I can leverage technology like a Saltbox has to integrate it, that just really takes the business, allows the business go to another level. So thank you so much for that, Carl. And Kristen, I think I'm going to pass it back over to you before I get yelled at for being too much overtime.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you, Carl. Appreciate those insights. That was a great discussion. Like Dave said, we are at the end of the half hour, so we're going to go ahead and skip Q&A. But if you do have any questions, feel free to send them in, and we'll make sure to reach out to you directly. Before we go, I'd like to go ahead and share a couple of resources that may be of interest to our audience today. First, we have an ebook from Ultra, Be Like Amazon, 3 Steps to a Better Customer Experience. And then from our friends at Vision 33, we've got Warehouse Management 4.0, a guide to seamlessly connecting with your data-driven consumer. I will send everyone an email following today's session with links to these free downloads, as well as a link to the recording of this session. And I think that's gonna be all we've got today. So thanks to everyone for joining. And thank you very much to our experts, Dave and Carl, for sharing your expertise. I'd like to wish everybody a great rest of your day, and we will see you at the next webinar.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.